in several areas. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. US President Donald Trump has met his South Korean counterpart Lee Jae-myung at the sidelines of the APEC Summit in South Korea. Trump has stated that a new trade deal with South Korea will be finalized very soon. Defending his global tariff strategy, Trump has also told business leaders at the APEC Summit that tariffs are bringing peace to the world. Meanwhile, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has emphasized that APEC must stand for solidarity as protectionism is rising across the world. 21 Pacific Rim economies are meeting this week in the historic city of Gyeongju. Let's in fact listen in to both of the leaders.
We're wedded and we have a very special relationship, a special bond. In fact, we're working with you on shipbuilding. We will build together, we will trade together, we will prosper together, we will thrive together, and above all, we will win together like never before. We're going to have an incredible relationship together for generations to come.
보호무역주의와 자국 우선주의가 고개를 들며 당장의 생존이 시급한 시대, 협력과 상생, 포용적 성장이라는 말이 공허하게 들릴지도 모르겠습니다. 그렇지만 이러한 위기 상황일수록 역설적으로 연대의 플랫폼인 APEC의 역할이 더욱 빛을 발할 것입니다. 단절의 시대를 잇는 연대의 힘입니다. 대한민국은 글로벌 책임 강국으로서 영내 신뢰와 협력의 연결고리를 회복하는 데 크게 기여할 것입니다.
In a related development, the South Korean president presented his US counterpart with a replica of an ancient gold crown. The symbolic gift was exchanged during their meeting at the Gyeongju National Museum. Separately, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has also arrived looking to boost trade and investment across the Indo-Pacific after stops in Malaysia for the ASEAN Summit as well. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping, along with leaders from Singapore, Papua New Guinea, Japan, Indonesia, the Philippines, Chile, Malaysia and Brunei will arrive tomorrow on the eve of the main APEC Economic Leaders meeting. With us on the broadcast is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, Foreign Affairs and Security and Strategy Analyst, joining us from Kuala Lumpur. He is at the University Malaya. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. It was quite an interesting speech we heard from Donald Trump earlier in the day, echoing his statements that he made at the ASEAN Summit as well as at the United Nations General Assembly. It was an America First charged speech that he put out. He spoke about semiconductors, electricity, shipbuilding, artificial intelligence, steel. He also hit out of the Biden administration, spoke about tax cuts taking place, his quest for interest rates being reduced as well. He spoke about his executive orders, eliminating hurdles as far as ensuring approvals for processes within the United States is concerned. But all in all, keeping the Indo-Pacific in picture, how do you view what is taking place in South Korea at the moment, the statements that Donald Trump has put out, the fact that he stressed a lot about artificial intelligence, shipbuilding. He's also looking at investments taking place from other countries in the United States.
These are the areas that will be of critical importance not only to the US, but in the future of the competition and rivalry between Washington and Beijing. And Trump is right to state that, US is back now in this region. It's 100% behind Southeast Asia, it's 100% behind East Asia. Of course, also on the terms of, under Trump's terms, to ensure that there is balance, there is fairness, not only in trade, but also the willingness of allies to have this burden-sharing concept. What he has stated also to Japan, what PACSAF has also stated, that Japan is now committed to increase its own budget defense as well. So we have seen how Trump is bringing this bilateral rivalry right to the doorstep of this region, and rightly so, because the US under Trump is now getting wealthier, and jobs are returning, firms are returning. Of course, in terms of resources, and all these key critical sectors, whether it's AI, whether it's semiconductor, whether it's critical minerals. So Trump is right and strategic in his efforts to ensure that the support remains with the US in terms of getting this needed buy-in from the region. hot from the heels of this the rare earths deal with Australia and with ASEAN and with Malaysia. So this is the exactly the strategic maneuver by President Trump, and rightly so, smartly so, to ensure that the US stays ahead, the gap is maintained with Beijing. And this platform in APEC gives a very strong message and very powerful message that the US has never, ever alienated this region, and under Trump, this alliance or this support or presence will be getting stronger than ever.
Indeed, and as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, Trump just wrapped up a visit to Japan. He's of course already met South Korea's President Lee Jae-myung, but earlier as well, during the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur, he'd met Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. There was a key agreement that was signed by both countries, providing unprecedented access to each other's markets. At the same time, we've also seen China and the ASEAN nations ink yet another free trade framework, bolstering access to each other's markets. There is, as you've mentioned, a great tussle going on between Washington and Beijing. Yes, whether it is Malaysia, whether it is Japan or South Korea, for example, they're all allies of the United States of America, but geographical reality of proximity to China cannot be ignored. So how do you think then the ASEAN nations and Japan and South Korea can then sort of balance this geostrategic reality along with geoeconomics?
We've seen how this inevitable reality of geographical risks and challenges to Japan and South Korea, both are facing a three-pronged threat from Pyongyang, from Beijing, and to a certain extent from Moscow. And of course, the proximity itself, has created this dilemma for both nations, and hence the increased need now more than ever for the increased U.S. security umbrella and security assurances. And of course, beyond that, both nations have also started their own alternative fallback options, engaging more closely than ever with Southeast Asia and with South Asia, with India also. So we have seen also now these extended mechanisms beyond the US, whether it's from Quad, whether these overtures to ASEAN. But ultimately, the ultimate support system will still remain with Washington. So this is the fact that both nations have understood, and that although realizing that economically, on economic terms, on trade terms, they are still very much reliant on China, on Beijing. In the end, ultimately, the markets, the technological importance, and most importantly, the assurances of security support from Washington will be the ultimate parameters for both nations. And we can see that being reflected by how both nations have treated Trump, and in terms of engaging more and setting these very important early terms of how both nations will work alongside with Trump and to get his favors, and of course also to ensure that they will get ultimately also a sustained and more resilient security umbrella in the near future.
All right, so requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other further updates. We're now learning that anti-Trump protesters have gathered in the South Korean city of Gyeongju to oppose his visit. The demonstrators have objected to the manner in which South Korean leaders and other global officials have welcomed the US president. Meanwhile, a former presidential candidate, Kwon Young-guk of the Democratic Labour Party, has also criticized the approach of world leaders, stating that they were bowing to US's pressure rather than focusing on genuine cooperation. Listen in.
태평양 연안의 동료 시민들이 연대와 평화 그리고 평등의 방파제가 되어 진정한 번영을 만들어가야 합니다. APEC이 대변하는 기업들만의 이익과 미국의 일방적인 관세 위협과 약탈적 투자 강요에 맞서 전 세계 민중들의 호혜적이고 평등한 삶을 만들기 위한 목소리를 모아나갑시다.
Additionally, the protesters in Gyeongju chanted "No Kings." Demonstrations against Trump's visit, holding signs and cardboard cutouts of him. Interestingly, these demonstrations echo similar sentiments to the No Kings protests which have been ongoing within the United States since June this year against Trump's policies and alleged corruption in his administration as well. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keat. Interesting development coming in. How do you read into these protests? There are, of course, security interests that the administration in Seoul is keeping in focus, but there are economic concerns. Of course, a lot of critics of the Trump administration have pointed out that he's wielding tariffs as a weapon. In fact, Lee Jae-myung himself expressed apprehension earlier at the benchmark that Donald Trump had said regarding $350 billion in economic investment, stating that there would have to be some sort of a currency swap to ensure that takes place.
Well, it is a reflection of the ongoing narratives to discredit Trump's efforts to bolster the economy of the US. And of course, these protests, again, as we all know, reflect those domestic discontent in South Korea, but they certainly do not undercut the strategic values of the US in terms of engaging deeply. And of course, Trump's hands-on diplomacy, his unique approach, offers this stability in terms of clarity. And we have to measure this in deliverables, in outcomes. We have seen how this visit and the message being sent by Trump, has enabled key areas to be focused on, trade deals, economic deals, critical minerals, resources, supply chain resilience, and most importantly on this reassuring message that the US will be here in East Asia and to secure the interests of both Japan and South Korea and Southeast Asia. So this will be the message that is being yearned now by both nations, and having to face with this increased bellicosity and risk being posed by Beijing. So this is exactly the symbolism, the message that has been waited for eagerly by both Seoul and Tokyo. So I will argue that by this strategic presence of Trump in both states, it sends a very compelling, clear and powerful message to both allies. It also sends a very compelling message also to Beijing that despite the ongoing tariff talks, despite efforts to reconcile in terms of the risk of decoupling and all that, the fact remains that China still remains as the ultimate challenge to the US. And under Trump's watch, there won't be any risk of China again taking East Asia or Southeast Asia as its own backyard. So that era has long gone now with Trump's presence in ASEAN, in Kuala Lumpur, and now in South Korea and Japan. So I think it sends a very clear message to both allies, and also a very clear ripple effects also to Taiwan, and of course to other players in the region, that the US will not back down to support this region.
Indeed, requesting you to stay put with us. Of course, you've spoken about China. China's foreign ministry now says that it stands ready to work with the United States for positive outcomes. These statements come ahead of the bilateral meeting between US President Trump and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, which is slated to take place tomorrow. Officials have confirmed that the talks will cover issues of strategic and long-term interest, and the Chinese ministry has further added that the meeting will inject new momentum into steady development of US-China relations. Meanwhile, they've also responded to Trump's recent comments on fentanyl. China has stressed that its position on the issue remains consistent and clear, and Chinese officials have in fact emphasized that both sides aim to strengthen dialogue and cooperation, signaling a focus on stability and constructive engagements ahead of this meeting, which is on the anvil. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keat. Of course, a crucial meeting. The world's eyes are peeled towards what exactly is it that Donald Trump and Xi Jinping will be discussing. On the table, of course, are the tariffs that Trump is threatening to invoke, 100% on top of the 30% that already exist. China, in retaliation, slapped steep port fees on US-flagged vessels. It had also, in fact, targeted some shipbuilding firms in South Korea in order to hurt the US administration as well, because that's one of the key points that key sectors that Trump is looking at reviving within the United States of America. Also in focus, of course, is the larger technological war, the NVIDIA chip access that was not allowed within China, China's rare earth minerals restrictions, which of course impacts the manufacturing of these chips and defense equipment, key for the United States as well. The TikTok deal is also on the cards. What are your expectations from this meeting?
Well, we can see that Trump has been strategic, beaming with confidence on the heels of his recent deals with Australia, with Malaysia, and with Japan now. So the cards and chips are still with Trump, and of course also Beijing is now compelled to present a new way forward in managing these crucial bilateral ties. But having also known the fact that with the new premiership in Japan and South Korea now, and Takaichi is a conservative, and that and Trump has made this early move to ensure that the new way forward for ties between Tokyo and Washington is going to be a solid and a much more robust one than before. So we have seen how President Xi is facing a time trap, and with these key domestic structural and systemic weaknesses of the Chinese economy, from an aging society to demographic decline to the poverty and debt crisis, and we have seen how also under Trump's watch, the momentum has now shifted to Washington in terms of jobs, in terms of wealth returning to the U.S., in terms of an expanded market base. So Trump is right when he argued that China is in reliance of the U.S. market, rather than the other way around. So this is, I think, will be on terms that will be favorable to the U.S. and to the nation. I mean, to the region and to Southeast Asia. And way forward, of course, Beijing is now compelled to ensure that ties ahead will be one of a managed competition, and that knowing fully that the advantage in terms of power gap, whether it's on economic terms or hard power capacity, Washington under Trump will still have the cards and chips, and that under Trump's watch, Taiwan will not be used as a pretext or a factor. This is a fact that I think President Xi knows very well, and that the way forward will be. I will argue that Trump has been strategic so far in managing this competition.
All right, with that, I would like to thank you, sir, for taking our time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus away from East Asia towards what's taking place in Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has stated that a guilty verdict in her alleged crimes against humanity case is preordained and politically motivated. Hasina has also condemned her trial as a jurisprudential joke. The former Prime Minister of Bangladesh has also stated that holding elections without the involvement of her party, the Awami League, will sow the seeds of further division in the country. This comes as the chief prosecutor of Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal earlier asked the judges to pronounce a death penalty on Hasina for causing the deaths of approximately 1,400 people allegedly in response to the student protests that had taken place in July 2024, which led to her ouster. The nearly 3-month trial ended last week, and the verdict in this case is expected to be delivered on the 13th of November. With us on the broadcast is Prashanta Kumar Shil, political commentator, joining us from Dhaka. Thank you so much for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Sheikh Hasina is now claiming that a witch hunt has taken place against her. She slammed the trial as a jurisprudential joke, claiming that it is preordained and politically motivated. I want to understand from you, how are the people of Bangladesh currently, processing the trial, viewing this trial and her statements where she's claiming that a witch hunt is taking place against her?
Yes, we see in the last from AFP interview, that the AFP is a very good agency and very well-known recognized agency for the news house. And she several from her statement from the trial of her. Very interestingly, he quoted that that kind of trial jurisdiction is one kind of joke. For allegation, for her allegation. But the matter, you see that the International Criminal Court, ICC, you see that all from state, that the present government, state, the appointment a lawyer from their side. So when you can just jurisdiction from any opponent or any verdict, but you have to from ensure his or her rights. But we see in the present time, the Sheikh Hasina in the present time, but there is no lawyer from her. The state already appoint from a lawyer for the Hasina. But you see the total story from there is an allegation about the artist, former Prime Minister of Sheikh Hasina. There is 1,400 people, the mass killing and the total everything. But you see that you have to, when you can just judge anything, you can, to the legal procedure, you have to maintain some standard ethical background and ethical framework to concluding the jurisdiction policy. But we see that unfortunately in the present government they cannot actually calculate, and prosecution is not from framing at all here. So that's the one kind of problem. And the second problem, very interestingly, you see that when the verdicts are just from go through there in the criminal court, and they have been attacking the mob violence. That is a very new arena from Bangladesh, because we haven't see that this is a very new experience for that. You have in safe and security. If you are a verdict, no problem. You have in safe and security in your jurisdictions premises, but you are not safe at all here. The mob attacking is here from when you can go through in the jurisdiction arena from High Court and Supreme Court area. So this is a very one kind of follow-up from that here. And the Hasina's statement, you know that this is the one force that is prescribed, and this is then motivated just from her. And we have to see this is one kind of one-sided statement from Sheikh Hasina, but it is a little bit true. The judge is one kind of sophisticated order from the government. What government view that from her, and that the judge can and the judge who are the ruling position, they can just statement for from them. This is one kind of issues, and you know that the total procedure for you that out-of-state Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and had the first interview from the one international media, and it is very significant from the Bangladesh community, who are the Bangladeshi people. They like to what's happening and what is our actually realization, and what is in her total scenario from that, and that guidance is very interesting, and we are just waiting to see how it is very trustworthy, and it will be very much actually accuracy to maintain for her, because you know that he's a former prime minister, and if you that kind of jurisdiction from Sheikh Hasina and other thinking, I think it will be very much need accuracy and your trustworthiness, and everything is happening. But otherwise, it will be very much shocking for the questionable in period, and people think that your jurisdiction is one kind of fabricated jurisdiction. People think that your jurisdiction is one kind of trial-based jurisdiction. So it's not a very welcoming for the present government.
Indeed, and I also wanted to understand from you, she's spoken about the elections that are slated to take place in February 2026. She stated that holding elections without the involvement of her party, the Awami League, will sow the seeds of further division in the country. Speaking of February 2026, it will be about a year and a half since her ouster, her government was toppled, since Mohammed Yunus was brought in as the interim chief advisor of the current government. How do you think these elections will pan out? We've seen, as you pointed out, there's been a lot of violence that's taken place. Mob attacks have become quite frequent as well. Can we expect these to also take place?
Yes, it's very interesting. You know that the fan follower of Bangladesh Awami League in Sheikh Hasina, it is still 50% in our country. So if you ban it from Awami League from the next election, it will be very much questionable for the election commissioner and the present government also. So if you make it your trust, fairness, and balanced election for the people, for the general people, but you have to need a balanced criteria for all the parties. You can just take it that my party is blah 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 and your party is only, so you are banned. So not, you have a very inclusive election. If you your election is very right way, your election is very fundamental way, you did to inclusive election for all the parties on the table. If you avoid some party intentionally, you cannot make your election very right way or good way. So this is a very one question, and another question.